Dove Cameron, horrifying story from final day on the set of Descendants. The Descendants movies have had emotional endings, and today we will be revealing things which happened on the last day of filming. Stick around to find out the horrifying story from Dove Cameron on the final day on set. Before we begin, remember to subscribe to Riveted and turn on the notification bell because we publish amazing videos daily. We can say the most emotional people were Dove and Sophia, who poured their hearts out on social media. Sophia Carson was in tears when she talked to Cosmopolitan about the last day they were on the set of Descendants 3. In the interview, she said they laid on the ground of a huge set they created, the massive green screen studio, and talked for hours and hours until basically they had to get kicked out. She also added that they were still in their full costumes as they thought about the last day where they could be together in the outfits. Before the show aired, she took to Instagram with a heartfelt post dedicated to her beloved blue counterpart, Evie. She wrote, "My dearest Evie, as I write this, I cannot bring myself to say goodbye to you, but this is not a goodbye. You and I are bound at the heart from here until eternity. And until then, I will love you, Evie, forever and for always." Sophia continued to thank the character for shaping her life and appreciated the bond she had with the Descendants family. On Twitter, she wrote, "Dear world, today is a wrap on Descendants 3. There will never, ever be enough words. From the very bottom of my heart, thank you. We will forever and always be your Evie, Mal, Jay, and Carlos. I love you, Chloe, Cam, and Boo. Forever and always, yours, Soph." Dove shared a picture on Instagram of her diary alongside a group shot of the cast with their hands in a circle and wrote, "Dear diary, today is the last day of Descendants." Are you crying yet? The previous day, she had posted a photo with Sophia saying it was the second last day of filming Descendants. Well, we would show you the posts, but the young actress recently deleted all her photos on Instagram. Talk about starting a clean slate. Sophia Carson once again posted a video of the cast members driving off from the set of Descendants. We can see the moon shining on them as she captioned on her video and Cameron Boyce waving goodbye with a huge smile. The moments filming Descendants 3 were emotional, but what happened on the last day of filming Descendants 2 was horrifying, as was narrated by Dove Cameron. To cast the new roles, Ortega and his team conducted a worldwide search. They found Dougherty in Scotland and Playfair in Vancouver. China McClain was competing with more than 100 other young actresses for her role. For D2, a total of 52 dancers were cast in the movie and put through weeks of dance rehearsals in Los Angeles and Canada leading up to the production of the movie. Let's not even talk about the last chapter of the franchise because that one had close to 100 dancers. If you didn't know, Descendants was filmed in Vancouver, meaning that the cast had to travel to set. Speaking of which, there was a time when they were shooting Descendants, and the weather was so bad they almost stopped the production. The director, Kenny Ortega, was scared for the young star's safety, but they assured him that they'd brave the weather and finish the filming. So, on the last day of filming Descendants 2, the cast had to pack their bags and head back home, but after making a stop, obviously, they'd become family and they all decided to spend the night at Dylan's house. Wow, they were so lucky that Dylan lives in Vancouver and they could all spend the night after a long day on set. The most interesting part about the night was that it was Halloween night. Spooky. The cast members couldn't let the night pass without doing some Halloween stuff. They all dressed up and took a bunch of photos, then they watched a couple of scary movies. At around 4 a.m., everyone was asleep in the house except for Dove and Thomas. The two decided to take a walk to McDonald's because it was right across the street. Of course, it was the only place open at 4 a.m. in Vancouver. Dove and Thomas walked to the place, and when they were getting back, they realized the place was dark and deserted. Come on, guys, didn't you see that it was dark and abandoned before deciding to leave the house? Of course, in such a situation, scary things always are happening. It's not a good feeling being alone on a dark, quiet road. There's always a feeling of someone following from behind, and in most instances, the person is always real. Worst case scenario, a thief or a serial killer could be waiting for the right moment to attack. Luckily for Dove and Thomas, it was Halloween night, so even if there were a serial killer on the loose, it would have been someone dressed as a serial killer and not an actual serial killer. They heard someone walking behind them, and when they turned around, it was a massive human being in a chicken's costume. No, not a kid or a teenager. The chicken was the size of an adult. Dove and Thomas were definitely scared, and they felt that something was not right. Luckily, the house was only a few blocks away, and they just kept walking. I'm sure they had the temptation to just run to the house, but they probably thought it was just some weird person on Halloween. We know well that Halloween is full of weird characters. The only thing which scared them was how the human being in the chicken costume behaved. The person in the costume did what every creepy person following someone would do. Every time Dove and Dougherty turned around to see if the person was still there, they stopped. At that time, they realized that the person was definitely following them, and their hearts started beating really fast. In Dove's head, that is how she was going to die. Imagine what the headlines would read the next day. 2 young stars, Dove Cameron and Thomas Dougherty, were last night attacked by a human chicken. As they got closer to the house, Dove and Dougherty started walking a bit faster, and the chicken did the other thing someone following another person would do. It started running towards Dove and Tom, and a million things were running through their minds. Dove knew for sure that they would be murdered on that night. Dougherty realized that his girlfriend was petrified and stayed behind to handle the situation. I mean, they had just started dating. He wasn't going to let Dove think he wouldn't handle a person in a chicken costume. Dove Cameron rushed into the house, and Dougherty hurriedly followed her in. When they entered the house, they locked the door, and the chicken started banging on the windows. When they didn't open the windows or the door, the chicken went to the other side of the house and banged on the other windows. Of course, at that time, everyone was awake, but Dove was terrified the most. One of their other friends came from the basement and asked what was going on. She went back down, and Dove realized that she'd been gone a long time. And another thing, which had been gone for a long time, was the chicken. Uh-oh. In her mind, she knew that the chicken was killing them one by one, and it had started with their friend in the basement. They were all scared for Danny and even thought about calling the cops. A few moments later, there was a knock on the door. Dylan, the owner of the house, went to open the door and saw the chicken. Of course, nobody had ordered from KFC, but he opened the door anyway for the creepy chicken. Thomas Dougherty knew that it was the best moment to prove himself. He shoved Dove out of the way like a superhero and pounced on the chicken. At that moment, everyone started screaming at him and telling him to stop because they knew who it was the whole time. It was Danny, Dylan's girlfriend. She took off the headgear and she was in tears because, of course, Dougherty had punched her a couple of times while in the costume. Dove said that Danny was doing okay, but we can't really know for sure. Can we just take a moment to reflect on how terribly wrong the joke would have gone? I'm sure Dylan meant no harm, and to them it was only a prank, but what if Dougherty had attacked the girlfriend with a knife? Whoa! This would have been a whole different story. Halloween is great, and the scares are what make the holiday memorable, but sometimes people should be a little more careful, right? Well, far from that, Dove has been doing several interviews, and in most of them, she seems to be addressing why she posted selfies without a bra on before talking about other things. Some followers are convinced that she only did it to draw attention to herself, even though she said that it was a gesture to tell ladies that they should be comfortable with their image and how they were created. In a recent interview, Dove Cameron also talked about her most memorable moment from Descendants. After filming D3, they didn't have a party on the same day, but they had it a few days later. The cast members decided to take off all their wigs and makeup, wore their robes and pajamas, and went down to the nearest store. They got all their favorite foods, went back to Dove's room, and cuddled on the floor as they cried and ate the food. Wow, it was such a special moment for them when they allowed themselves to be that vulnerable. In the same interview, she also answered a couple of questions from her fans. Dove described herself as complex, excitable, intense, loving, and growing. She revealed that her favorite Descendants movie was the third one because it was the one she really bonded with her friends, and she has a lot of memories from the third movie. Fans also asked Dove if there would be a fourth Descendants movie. Of course, that question comes up a lot. Dove said that they had wrapped the franchise like there wouldn't be the fourth one, but she also stated that it's possible to have a fourth one since there's so much which can come from Descendants characters. While we are still keeping up with Dove Cameron, she has something amazing coming our way soon. Light in the Piazza was recently showcased in London, and it will be showcased in the US as well. That's something to look forward to apart from her song, which also drops very soon. Well, that's all we have for today, and we hope you enjoyed this video. If there's anything you want us to cover, let us know in the comments section below. This has been Riveted.